posture.
Yeah, good posture. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Coronavirus Conversations. This is the second to last episode this week, and I am here with some great people, and we're going to talk about some cool stuff today. We're going to kind of think about how we can, pardon the pun, grow beyond where we are right now. And so I'm really excited for my guests. We're going to talk about cooking and gardening today in the midst of a pandemic. And I've got some great guests with me today. I want to introduce them briefly, but then I'm going to give them an opportunity to introduce themselves. And you guys probably by now know the drill. We do a guided conversation for 25 or 30 minutes here. I've got some questions already set up that we're going to ask our guests, and then we'll break off into your questions. We are live on Facebook as well as Crowdcast on ashlandsource.com's Facebook page, as well as Knox pages and our parent company, Richland Source. So without further ado, I want to introduce Walter Bonham. Walt is with us. He is with eatthefoodlab.com, as well as about a dozen different organizations, and he's so deeply embedded into the microfarming and urban farming movement here in Richland County. And he's coming live to us from a high tunnel right here in Mansfield, and he's going to show us around a little bit of what they're up to. We're also joined by Korinna Goettl of. Korinna, wave your hand since there's two ladies on the. So we're joined by Korinna Goettl of IdeaWorks and the Entrepreneur's Kitchen, and she's the operations manager there and works with food entrepreneurs of all kinds, again, right here in Mansfield. And of course, the face that you might recognize most likely is Chef Susan Vander Maas of Doc's Deli. Susan has been a food pioneer and a farm-to-table pioneer in Mansfield and Richland County for a very long time now. She is the owner of Doc's Deli out by Ohio Health Mansfield, and we're just so glad to have you guys here with us. But I want to give you just a quick opportunity and a quick intro question. Introduce yourselves a little bit and tell us what drew you to food as a calling or a business that you're now involved with. Korinna, we'll start with you.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me. Got started in food.
Hey, Korinna, we're getting a little bit of feedback from you, so maybe turn your volume down or mute your, because it may be. Yeah, that's better. Thanks.
Is that better?
Yes, much.
I'm still getting feedback.
Well, so I'm gonna jump to. We'll jump to Susan while you're working on that.
Sure.
Susan, what brought you to the food business?
Well, I had an Italian grandma, so I had a lot of cooking experience from the time I was small. And I had this opportunity to jump in with some other investors in the restaurant 13 years ago, and we kind of took it from there. And right now we're in a good spot as far as across from Ohio Health. We're able to help some of those frontline fighters that are working, supporting all of us. So I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Walt, tell us a little bit about what drew you to the food business.
Just really, me personally, just wanted to do better. A few years ago, just wanted to do better with my own health, what I was eating, and kind of what I was doing, what I was feeding my kids, and so on. And just kind of felt like if I wanted to do something other than complain, I needed to be a part of the solution and not just complain about the problems. And got more into just a deep dive into myself, and then kind of just reflected into me, just taking advantage of the opportunities that I had to get heavily involved in food, and just taking it one step at a time. I was a complete stranger to farming and a complete stranger to catering and cooking, and just had to kind of accept that and be okay with it, and just take it one day at a time as I learned. And years later, I'm proud to be able to cater now. I'm proud to be farming now and things like that.
Korinna, you want to give it a shot?
I'll give it another shot. I'm still echoing. I can hear that.
Yeah, it's weird. It may be. Do you have a Facebook window open on your computer, or do you have any other places? Like, if your Facebook is open, close that window, because you might be picking up feedback from.
Yep.
That will probably cure it if you kill that.
There we go.
That's much better.
Yeah. Perfect. All right. So I grew up surrounded by farmers. My whole family, they were dairy farmers, they crop farmers, and we had a big garden every year and pulled weeds as a daily chore through the summer. So we always had fresh food. So I learned early how to preserve food and how to make do with what we had on hand. We didn't really run to the grocery store. We were cooking with what you had in the freezer. We had always beef in the freezer. So it kind of came early, just naturally, because that's what we did. And so through the years, I continued that. And then I was fortunate enough to be asked to be director of operations for the shared use kitchen. I'm passionate about helping others get started in their own food business. So from there, here I am.
That's fantastic. We're so glad to have you guys here today. And my first question is just sort of a table setter, so to speak, but do you have a go-to dish for a global pandemic? Is there a favorite go-to dish as cooks?
All the food.
I had to laugh when I was thinking about what my go-to dish is, and I cook with basically what I have in my refrigerator. And what I had was some of Walt's spinach from his farm. I had some tomatoes and cream. Those are like my basic go-tos, and pasta. So I pretty much take whatever I have, throw it all together, and it's never the same twice. I used to always get accused of never remembering how to make the same thing good again. That's how I cook for the pandemic.
How about
you? I feel like it's important more than ever to eat healthy, of course, because we're at home and not maybe as active as we were before. But I also feel like it's important to treat yourself to some comfort food once in a while, whatever that is for you. And also make food that you can share. Like if you've got elderly parents or neighbors that might enjoy a home cooked meal and you don't feel bad about getting out there and delivering some food to people, I think it's important to cook a meal that big enough to share. So yeah.
How about you, Walt? Any go-tos for a global pandemic?
Well, me personally, I've been doing a lot of eating local right now. A lot of pickups and stuff right now, but me personally, I keep it really simple. Usually cut up, like kind of like Korinna said, anything that's in the refrigerator, anything that go in one skillet, and kind of heat it up all together. But I would say one of the biggest things is just keep it simple and just be grateful in the times that we live in, that we can eat the way we do, and we do have food available, although it is kind of a little bit difficult times right now, but we do have things available that we can eat and things too. So.
That's great. So there's this, this is for all three of you, there's this show on Netflix and a book by a chef named Samin Nosrat, and I'm probably butchering her name, and I apologize to her if she ever sees this, but that inspired that show, I believe, and it's called Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat. And the Atlantic called it a love letter to amateur cooks. And the idea is that these are like the 4 basic elements of making anything taste good. Is Samin right?
I feel like, I love that show, by the way. I just rewatched it.
I love it. I mean,
it's great. She's very globally minded, and it's great. I think she's right. I feel like, if you have dietary restrictions, of course, you may not be able to have all the salt and all the fat, but with keeping that in mind, I like her approach.
What about you guys? Is it? I mean, and I'm gearing this more toward amateur cooks, people that are cooking a lot more now than they were before, or this is really what this show is geared at, is the fact that it's harder to go out to eat, even though you can still order takeout and home delivery from places like Doc's Deli. We're probably cooking more, and that is different. And so I'm kind of aiming that question at amateur cooks is, do you think that, like, if you can kind of work on those 4 elements, are you off to a good start with cooking?
Oh, I definitely agree. when you think about the basics of all recipes, the basic ingredients, it is those elements that you need. And I mean, the cool thing too is you can swap them.
Mm-hmm.
You can swap your fats. You can swap some of those elements, the acids. It doesn't have to be the same thing each time. And again, going back to what do you have in the refrigerator, especially now as maybe we're not able to get out and shop as much.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you run out of something. So it's important to be able to know how to swap out your oils, for example. I love Googling. When I run out of something, I love Googling what can I substitute it for. And I think that's really helpful now when you just can't go to the grocery store to get what you need, to be able to find those kind of substitutions. And it's surprising sometimes how much your result tastes so good with those kind of swaps.
Right. Mm-hmm. What is, it's pretty easy to understand, salt and heat. Fats can be, bacon, it can be butter, it could be different types of oils, but what's acid? Where does that, what piece of the pie is that? Is that citric acid? Is some real live examples that people can touch and feel and buy in the grocery store? What would be examples of the acid component in a dish that you're making?
Susan?
Walt, do you have any input on that, Walt, from what you grow in your gardens? I mean, she talks about it in the show, and there's some surprising ways to get acid into your meals.
Well, I have not saw that show. So that is definitely, I'm a Netflix fan, but I have not saw that show. So that's definitely something to add onto my list to check it out. And
I'll drop a link to it in the chat here.
Yeah, definitely. I'm fortunate enough to work with Drayvon Wilson, who is a chef. He's trained in culinary cooking, and he handles a bunch of the cooking and things with us right now. And he would definitely be the person. I wish he was here to kind of answer that too. He would definitely be the person to ask that question too. But a lot of that concept, a lot of as far as the when you get down to those basic points of it all, that's not really my specialty.
Is it, when you think about that concept, is if you're cooking with wine, does that comprise an acid in a recipe? Or
Mm-hmm.
Lemon chicken, if you're drizzling lemon or lime over something, that's what's balancing that out, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, there's a lot of fruit that has the acid in it, but there's a surprising number of vegetables that have acid in them too. I'm sorry, I can't think of. Probably asparagus and spinach and things like that, but basically vinegars,
vinegars. All right.
Juices.
Okay.
Also, just if you don't mind me saying, it just so happens, since you asked that question, my Thrive article this month, which will publish probably Saturday, also talks about stocking your pantry. So if the listeners want to look for that article, it's important to have a really well-stocked pantry so you're not making multiple trips to the grocery store every week. And then just some ideas for meal plannings and things like that. For instance, having themed meals like breakfast for dinner night or taco night or let the kids cook night.
Well, and sort of speaking of that and this idea of figuring it out as you move along, that kind of takes us into our next question, which is hypothetically, maybe or maybe not, in the Allred home, we have some chicken in the fridge and a reasonable spice selection and a cast iron skillet, along with enough salt, fat, acid, and heat to go around. What should we do with it tonight? And I'm sort of asking for me, but I'm kind of asking for our listeners too. Let's do a real world example. You've got some chicken in the fridge, you've got a reasonable amount of spices, you've got access to a few things, but maybe not everything. What should we do with that? And we've got a cast iron skillet and a working oven. What should we do?
First off, good job on the cast iron skillet, Jay. That's I said, nice job with the cast iron skillet. That's my throwback. I have 3 of them and I use them all the time. But that's an unusual thing for most people to have. Like I said, always have cream and vegetables, and I like to combine those things because sometimes if you have a family, getting your kids to eat steamed veggies or somehow separate vegetables is a little tricky. If you can get them all into one pot, you can kind of hide them in there and still get the nutrients to your kids. So I have tomatoes, fresh tomatoes. I have fresh spinach. I would probably fry up my chicken, spice it real nice, fry it up. I'm a big fan of bacon grease. Don't yell at me.
Totally not yelling at you.
I would start with that to give it a little bit more flavor. Fry up the chicken and then stir in some cream. I'm a big fan of butter as well. I do in my house. We go all natural. I don't even let margarine touch anybody's lips around this house, but I would do something with that.
Okay.
With vegetables and some cream and a real hearty, belly warming kind of food. I feel like right now, I think Susan mentioned it earlier, like we're all stressed. This is a very stressful time. And I feel that some really good comfort food is warming, and it brings us together. So.
How about you, Susan? I saw you going at it. Were you whipping up a recipe while Korinna was talking?
I was. Yeah. Stir fry. You can cut that chicken into strips, marinate it in maybe some ginger and soy sauce, and then it throws a bunch of vegetables in there and maybe some udon noodles or rice. Serve it with. It's a great way to get more vegetables, like Korinna said. Yeah.
How about you, Walt? I've got chicken, some reasonable access to spices, a working oven, and a cast iron skillet. What would you do with it?
I'll probably do something similar, just to what I was saying earlier. Just chopping up any veggies that you got in there, and then right about 10 minutes or so after you chop your chicken up, before all your chicken gets done, go ahead and throw your veggies in there with some seasoning and some olive oil, right, and you eat it right out the skillet, right.
All right, I like that. Walt cooks like I cook.
There you go. Big dishes right now.
So let's pivot a little bit and talk about. I want you guys to. We talked about this in the green room a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about the community gardening. I mean, I don't know if it's a stretch to call it a renaissance that is happening right now in Richland County in north central Ohio. And I think that even though we've reported on it quite a bit at the source and other media in the region, our colleagues at the News Journal and WMFD have also reported on it, I think it's really hard I think it's so useful to have you guys all with us today, because it will show and demonstrate a little bit about the interconnectedness. But Walt, I want to start with you, because you're actually at a micro farm right now. And can you talk a little bit about what's happening with community gardening and micro farming in and around Mansfield and Richland County? And are you really growing vegetables year round?
Yeah, we definitely are growing vegetables all 4 seasons right now. In the wintertime, that's all you do, really just transition over into a crop that can take the winter. And we actually just came out of our winter crop, and we've got a spring crop in now. But as far as everything that's kind of going on, there's always been a huge uplifting of gardening going on in the area. NECIC found that out as they started giving out community grants for people to start community gardens years ago. And that's what's led into a lot of the work that you see now, and even moving into farming. And that's one of the biggest. There's a little confusion about farming and gardening. It's not about the size of the plot of land that you're using or anything. It's just about what you're doing with your produce. So you can have a 20-acre garden if you're not selling your produce, or if you're not growing in a sense of source of money or income, or to provide for others. Then you are gardening. And if you're even in your backyard and you are selling your produce and you're growing for other people and producing for other people, then you're farming. So it really doesn't matter the size; it just matters what you're doing. And so I think there's been a ton of gardeners in the area and people interested in growing food. And then now, when the opportunity came to start farming and to start kind of taking it to the next level, you've seen a bunch of avid growers and people that were interested in growers kind of come out and join together, and that's what brought about our cooperative and the interest in things that you see now.
Maybe maybe you can get up and walk around and kind of show our viewers some of what's happening out. Where are you right now?
Yeah, so right now I'm at the NECIC's farm, the North End Community Collaborative farm down here on 311 Bowman Street. And it's made up right now. We have 8 different high tunnels here. 4 different farmers are here, 2 tunnels apiece. And we all have outside beds that are being developed and planted and things now. And so this is our first full season of farming. We kind of came on board late summer last year and then got a chance to get in our winter crop. So we're excited to really get our first full season in. And I'm just kind of walking over to one of the other tunnels over here too. You just kind of see around. We kind of made extra room in this tunnel for extra bed. And then actually we have an NECIC farmer over here. This is Justin over here too, working on some things.
Hi, Justin. How you doing?
So people interested in farming and gardening or any of those type of things, you can actually visit us down at the urban farm and come in if the gates open. You know, we love to have visitors down here to stop in and kind of explain things in a little bit more detail about what's going on and maybe like how to get involved in the community as far as growing your own food for yourself and also possibly getting a community gardening grant within ECIC or something like that as well.
I think it's really extraordinary, and I'm glad you did that because it's important to show the scale of this. I think a lot of people think of farming and gardening, they either think of, a giant farm that's, 1,000 acres, or they think about a 400 square foot plot in their backyard, but they don't think about high tunnels, 4-season growing in the middle of Ohio, but at that scale. I mean, you guys are going to produce a lot of vegetables.
We all aggregate together. So right now our cooperative, the Richland Grow Op, and I have links for that stuff out there in the chat.
Great.
We all aggregate together and sell as one unit, as one cooperative. So like for example, and just in the tunnels that we have here, we have 4 different tunnels of carrots growing, 2 different tunnels of lettuce growing, and we have a tunnel of spinach as well. So, and baby kale, and baby kale as well. So we're all going to aggregate together with the other farmers, and then that way we can meet large demand. So instead of one farmer trying to produce so much, we all come together, and then we can meet these large demands of different buyers in the area, and now we're able to make a contribution to the supply chain that was never there before. So now you have people right here in Mansfield growing food and people able to consume that food, not only here in Mansfield, but around the local area as well.
I'd like to transition that question now. The food's been harvested, and Korinna, where does the Entrepreneur's Kitchen and the food aggregator come in inside this? And well, you nailed it when you called it a supply chain. As it moves from your farm and other farms in the region, how does the Entrepreneur's Kitchen and the food aggregator come together in that moment?
So we're super excited to be partnering with the Richland Grow Op. We started working with them even before they had a name for their co-op. So it's been really awesome watching them come together, form their organization, and put up their hoop houses and grow their food. The Entrepreneur's Kitchen, which recently moved from the Barrington building, it's where it was founded and where it was started, moved to the Sons of Italy building over on West 3rd Street. And we partner with the Grow Up by offering them space to bring their produce, wash it, pack it, and cool it until it's ready for sale. So we are the next step. Once they harvest, we become the next step for them to bring it all together for resale.
And then how does that transfer out into restaurants, Susan? If Walt's finished with it, his team over there, it's moved through the aggregator, and now it's available for individuals and restaurants to move from the farm to their table. How do restaurateurs plug into this network?
Well, I think the Entrepreneur's Kitchen is going to be a great resource. Hopefully, maybe we can get deliveries through there. I don't know if that's in the works or not. I think it was talked about at one point.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do have an Amish guy now that he does hydroponic organic farming, and we get a lot of lettuces from him right now, but he delivers. So it's going to be a matter of figuring out how those pieces work. Either we have to go pick it up, or it has to be delivered to us.
One of the really cool things that I love about where we're located is we're talking a lot about urban farming. That's what's happening with Walt's Farm where he's at now. It's a part of the urban landscape. We've got there's other farmers that are part of the grow up that are actually have a home down in the downtown area and have installed their hoop houses there. We're located in downtown as well, the Entrepreneur's Kitchen. So we kind of form a center hub and makes it, I feel, easier for people to bring their produce to us, and then for us also to reach out to our local community. We kind of bring it all together, all in one spot, to make it easier for people to have access to it.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
And then this is once again, this is our first full season coming online now. So now we'll be able to get our produce out there to more people in Mansfield. Now, we didn't have as much access and availability before, with us just kind of starting out and getting our training crops out and getting our winter crop out. But we're really looking forward to trying to provide food to docs and other entrepreneurs and restaurants and people around here as well.
So crystal ball in hand, I think there's probably going to be a lot of new or returning gardeners this summer due to coronavirus. Folks that, I don't know that they're not doing it necessarily out of fear. It's a little bit harder to go to the grocery store right now. It's not quite as convenient as it once was. We are eating probably a little bit healthier. We are thinking about our health a little bit more. So I sense that there's probably going to be a lot of new and returning gardeners. I'm probably going to be one of them. What do you guys think? Do you see that? You pull out your crystal balls, or who you're talking to, and what inputs are coming in through your websites or through the conversations that you're having. What do you guys think? Do you see that there might be more fresh produce available than there was last year?
I haven't had a garden where I lived for several years, but even before the conversation outside of my house came up about gardening, I said, I feel like I need to have a garden this year. And some of it is just for the sense of stability in my life, to know that if I can't get to the grocery store, if it's not safe to be at the grocery store, at least I can go out back and pick my own food. So some of it is just that security blanket, I feel like. Being able to control my food resources better. So, and then I know that I've been listening to the news, and gardening sales are already up. So that's one impact, a positive impact of the virus.
I had a friend on Facebook say she was trying to order seeds the other day and they were sold out. And I thought that is the craziest thing in the world to be sold out, but it's a signal, right? And the noise. Yeah. Susan, you see people every day, this is as a restaurateur, what's your sense on that? Do you feel like it's going to be a more popular pastime for folks?
I definitely feel like more people are going to have gardens. And I did want to also say that you can also make a potager garden. It's an old-fashioned way of gardening that combines flowers with vegetables. There's tons of resources out there, but it's Potager, or potager is the French pronunciation. But I feel like there's going to be a lot more people out there having home gardens, but also seeking out places like Walt's, that they just want to go pick up some food that they feel is fresh and healthy, but also that's organically grown without using a bunch of pesticides and fertilizers. Right. I think that's an important part of that whole factor too.
How about you, Walt? I mean, is that sort of a signal that you're on the tip of that spear in terms of growing your own food and controlling that? Do you see a lot of folks, whether they're engaging in farming or gardening, but do you see that that's happening more with the folks that you talk to?
Yeah, I mean, even the way we eat now has just become a huge convenience. But when you get back down to it, not too long ago, it would have been hard to to go to somebody's house or somebody's area or even community without seeing a bunch of gardens. So I think that you definitely will see some type of return in that, where people kind of not only even before our current times, just people just trying to pay better attention to what they're eating, just trying to take better care of their bodies, and there's no secret that food it does help prevent all types of diseases, and it's good for your immune system and things too. So I think that as people, and that's kind of what brought about my earlier journey on with food. I think as people start caring about their health more, they'll start caring about what they put inside their mouth more, and then they'll start caring about where it comes from more. And you can't beat being able to come down to the urban farm or getting with one of your local farmers in the community and really seeing where your food is coming from and buying food locally like that.
So let's kind of get down to brass tacks for a minute. If I've never planted a garden before, I have a small lot. I don't live out in the country, but I'd like to try to put in a few plants this year and see how it works out, and try not to embarrass myself in front of my neighbors. Like what's the starter kit, right? Like what are plants what are great plants for me to start with that taste good and that grow well? And if you guys have if this is where, if you've got some resources that are handy and you want to drop some links in the chat, feel free to do that. But like, just kind of talk about, what I've never done this before. What do I need to do to get started?
Well, I was in that position a few years ago, and I think one of the biggest things is just to kind of just get out there and really just do it. With us, of course, get online, of course, kind of research things, but also, I'm able to provide that help to people as well. The food lab likes to do that stuff as well. I was able to help a few people garden last year. I'm building hoop house and raised beds and different things like that this year. And I can get involved with helping people kind of come up with those different decisions. But on the basic side of it all, no matter how much room you have, even if you just have a porch or patio, you can get into container gardening. Container gardening is really popular right now as well. So it just kind of is a matter of kind of what you want to grow. But some of the simplest crops to grow, all of your greens, all your lettuces, and all your spinaches and things are really easy to grow. Some of the bigger crops that kind of fruit, like your tomatoes and things like that, can be a little bit more difficult because they require more nutrients. But it's just a matter of just experimenting, Jay, and just kind of getting that first season under your belt of just trying, and then you'll get stronger and stronger every year.
I think to kind of add to what Walt said too, a lot of people maybe they're not comfortable bending over gardening at the ground level, and I think raised beds are a really great way to go for people who have maybe some limitations with accessing, bending over, mobility, that type of thing. And that's a really popular movement right now, is building a raised bed garden. And there's a lot of help on YouTube. I mean, YouTube is a resource to go to, and people are really creative about planting gardens. I know when I grew up, planting gardens meant you planted it in the ground and you planted straight rows of one single item. Anymore, I mean, it's all, when I go out and look at the hoop houses that Walt's farming, it's crazy how they're planting like plants really crowded, but getting huge results from that. Like the volume of produce is amazing from such a small space.
Susan, do you have any advice on that in terms of
Yeah, I feel like soil is the first place to start. You can get soil test kits, and then also make sure that your yard has enough light, or the space where you want to put your garden has enough light. And there are also resources online to find out how you take those light tests during the day. So those are the two most important factors, I feel. And then, things that are easy to grow are tomatoes and peppers, and I call it a salsa garden. So if you want to just plant some basic things to start with and see how that goes, and then take it from there the next year, and it's going to be an experiment, because different things grow differently in different places, obviously, and you're going to plant things that you want to eat.
Right. Yeah. Like, don't aspirationally plant things. Plant stuff that you actually already like to eat.
Right. Exactly.
So I've got one last question, and then we're going to pivot to audience questions, and those are starting to come in, and we're really glad for that. What if I don't want to grow my own, but I want to have access to fresh local produce this summer? All those things. How do I get at those sweet vegetables? What are the, like, I mean, I know there's farmers markets, Walt, but talk a little bit about how your setup works, and if maybe I live in an apartment and I can't really grow my own vegetables, how can I get at that fresh local produce?
Outside of the farmers market that NECIC is going to have starting in on Thursdays in June, so coming up here soon. Outside of that, we are going to try to have our produce and possibly like even a KV market.
Okay.
And then also there's been some talks about even trying to possibly start a kind of like online farmers market, kind of try to create some of that online access to people as we grow, and then also possibly being able to reach out to Richland Grow Up, right, our cooperative as a whole of farmers through our Facebook page or something like that. You can kind of reach us as farmers individually, and that could be kind of a direct way to kind of have access to local produce.
You know, and one thing I want to make sure we deliver a plug for Walt's services. I've dropped a link to his website, eatthefoodlab.com, in the chat here on Crowdcast, and Walt will actually come out. I mean, you can schedule a consultation, and he'll come out if you want to put in your own garden or you want to think about microfarming on your land. Walt will come out and do a consultation with you and help you kind of figure out what your next steps are to determining what's going to work best for you. Do you want to be a gardener? Do you want to be a farmer? And how to do that best. So I wanted to make sure that folks can do that. And you can check Walt's site out at eatthefoodlab.com, and there's also a link in the chat here. So let's hang on here. I'm going to pull up my little window that no one can see except for me. We've got a great question. We have a great question from Clarita Molina here, and actually my colleague Brittany Schock, who's joining us in the chat across probably 6 different windows on her computer at home, is asking. Let's see here. Clarita asks, can growing indoor, is there like if I'm growing vegetables indoor, do I have to think about a plant food, and is there a good way to kind of make that happen? What sort of fertilizer should I recommend? And Brittany adds to this. She says, hey, agreed. What if we don't have access to a yard to start a garden? How do we start growing in, say, an apartment?
Yeah, once again, container gardening. You can grow tomatoes in single pots. You can vine plants in single pots. You can even even if you have like any type of access in an apartment, you can even just have like a small wooden bed structure that will go along your patio or anything like that as well. Because if you can't go in ground, you can definitely get some type of wooden bed structure, even if it's small, and just grow up as well. So you don't have to go out, you can grow up. That's kind of a way to go about it. And then also I would encourage people to possibly look into growing at other places. I mean, me, myself personally, I don't have the home or a place or my own place to be able to grow. So I was lucky enough to be a part of this program and be able to farm here at NECIC. But even outside of this project, I'm also going to farm at another location with a fellow farmer. So they're actually sectioning out a little bit of land for me to farm with them. So you can maybe look into just somebody else that has some land, or a friend or family member that kind of has a yard that's not been put to use. Maybe you can grow vegetables there as well.
That's great. That's great. Thanks. I hope that answers your question. You know, and the other thing that I was thinking about is that herb gardening is a nice, easy way to get started too. They grow well in pots, and if you can't grow your own food, those fresh herbs make your food that you bought at the store taste better.
Yeah. And as they were talking about as far as the soil wise too, you know, you can your local stores around here, they can get you there with the potting mix that you would need for you to grow inside vegetables. I mean, excuse me, some vegetables on like a patio or something like that as well too.
I've got a couple of questions here coming in from Facebook. One, and they're very related, so I'm going to handle them both at the same time. Ruthie Good and Robert Kryling from Facebook both asks basically the same question. I have tried to plant a garden, but there are more and more deer in the area, and they eat the garden and the flowers. How can I keep them out without building a whole structure like Walt has?
Well, actually, Justin right here, he actually put up some deer netting around his high tunnel. So on the outside of his tunnel, he has netting that to help prevent. You can't really kind of see it right now because the tunnel's being closed, but he has netting around to help prevent anything from coming in, including deer. But you can just get set with some basic fence posts and some deer netting. That's pretty much the cheapest way to go about it, and that won't cost you too much in the long run in comparison to the crops you get that you'll be protected. And actually, we have some right here in the tunnel. It comes in like this big row here, and if you put that up with some simple fence posts, you can even find fence posts used, so you don't have to try to go out and buy a bunch of new material. And get you a couple rows of this and wrap it around your garden. That will prevent the deer from coming out and the raccoons and those type of things as well.
Any other advice from Korinna and Susan on that? I'm sure we've all. I know that's always been a challenge for us as well. Is that you grow this really delicious stuff and the critters like it too.
Yeah. I mean, I live in a city and I have deer in my backyard who love to eat hostas. I think there's I've had some success with some all natural deer repellent. It's kind of I believe it's an animal urine based spray, so it's not harmful at all. I've used that on some of my flower beds around the perimeter of the flowers, and they seem to stay away when I use that. But that's kind of a nonstop battle having to spray and keep up with that.
Yeah.
But it works.
That's great. Thank you for the help on that. From my colleague, we have this question, Katie Ellington, and this is kind of a cooking question. She says that she ordered some groceries on Instacart and they gave her an extra bag of spinach by mistake, and she's worried about it going bad. Can you guys give her? Can we give Katie a quick recipe for that spinach so she makes good use of it before it goes bad?
Yeah, I like to put a little oil in a cast iron skillet and put in some fresh garlic, and then just pile in the spinach. It cooks down so much. You can get a great big huge bag of spinach and it'll cook down to probably 2 or 3 servings. So that's a great way to use spinach that you're afraid is going to go bad.
I like to throw it in soups. Even like any of your chicken noodle soup, or if you've got turkey soup, anything like that, you throw it in. It has a really nice texture and flavor. Wilts down nicely.
That's great.
I actually just finished growing a ton of spinach. With a bunch of spinach that I had left over, you're able to just freeze it. You can clean it and freeze it. And then, as they were talking about, as you want to when you want to cook a different dish or stir fry something, you can just literally take it out of the freezer, throw it right in the pan, and use it later as well.
That's fantastic. You guys, I think we're going to end a little bit early today. Or I want to make sure that our folks that are joining us on Facebook and Crowdcast know that we've got a few more minutes for questions, and you want to drop those questions. Yes, Brittany, I am getting hungry after this conversation. It is lunchtime. It's like, why did I think I was going to do these over lunch? But it's worked out okay. I want to thank our guests, Korinna Goettl from IdeaWorks Ohio and the Entrepreneur's Kitchen. I want to thank Susan Vander Maas from Doc's Deli, who has joined us today, and so my friend Walt Bonham from the Food Lab Incorporated. All of them are. It's just astonishing how interconnected the supply chain is in even a local area, and how interdependent they are on one another, and how they help one another in so many ways. And speaking of interconnectedness, oh wait, I've got a great question here before we go too far. So Katie Ellington, again, my colleague, she doesn't have much sunlight in her apartment. And if I want to container garden, can I cheat with UV lights?
Yes, you can. Yes, you can. You got to have certain lights as far as to grow things that fruit. But if you wanted to do like different type of lettuces or spinach or Swiss chard or different type of greens, yes, you can use LED light and cheap.
And are those lights that can just be sort of purchased at Lowe's or Home Depot? I mean, they're not. Does she have to go to a special gardening store to buy those kinds of lights?
Yeah, you do need LED grow lights.
Okay.
But I would just hop online and just get them shipped right to you. Don't go around running around trying to hunt them down. And then especially if you're just trying to do some container gardening and you're not trying to do too much, it would be relatively cheap as well.
That's great.
I love all these gardening questions too. I encourage everybody to come down and check out me and Justin down at the urban farm. Please and bring those gardening questions. I know it's kind of hard to answer everything in this setting.
And where are you again? You're at 311 Bowman Street, right?
311 Bowman Street. It's the old Gorman Rupp building right next to the old Jones potato chip factory. And
just, to kind of give a shout out to Gorman Rupp, they basically donated that land, didn't they? I mean,
yes, they did. Yes, they did. We knew we had a big project coming up, and we were looking for different areas to kind of to start farming in, and we were trying to find a effective location to really make a huge impact on the community of Mansfield, in our urban community. And Gorman Rupp has been amazing through the whole process. I mean, from start to finish, even when it was just literally me and Deanna riding around the car, tossing around ideas. And then from day one, that when we reached out to them, they had been on board trying to be really supportive. And they've been supportive through the whole process of everything. They were 100% responsible for us being able to get water going at the farm. They provided a pump for us to allow us to pump water before we were able to get our water installed here at the site too. So it's been great having them as a partner right here next door with us here at the farm as well.
It's pretty exceptional. They're an exceptional corporate citizen, and I wanted to take that opportunity to thank them for their help on this effort. A lot of these things aren't possible without all of us working together. And speaking of interdependence, I want to thank all of you for coming. I want to thank everybody for joining us on Coronavirus Conversations today, both on Crowdcast and on Facebook. And I want to ask very candidly that we are dependent on you. The journalism that we do and the work that our reporters do every day to cover not only this story, but all the stories that they've covered over the last 6 years here in Richland County, Ashland County, and now Mount Vernon. They're powered by the support of our members, our newsroom partners, and in this case, some help from the Facebook Journalism Project, for which we're very thankful. And if you're interested in supporting this kind of independent local journalism, we would encourage you to become a member. Think about 100% of your support goes to our reporting efforts. So it all goes to help Katie and Brittany and Noah and Larry and all of their colleagues do what they do and tell the stories of our county. So you can do that by there's a green button on your screen if you're joining us on Crowdcast. It says support our reporting. You can check out our membership program. You can also see that online at sourcemembers.com. So we want to thank again our guests, Korinna, Susan, and Walt, for joining us today. And we will see you tomorrow for the final episode in this 3-week series of conversations about the coronavirus and what people are doing to respond to it, where we're going to talk about fitness and how a couple of organizations locally have really adapted very, very quickly to bring fitness to people virtually through Facebook and through other means to help people stay fit during a pandemic. So if you're interested in keeping your kids fit, if you're interested in working out, if you're interested in just trying to watch other people work out because you just are too busy watching Netflix and Tiger King, all of those things are appropriate. You can join us tomorrow at noon. Thanks to my colleague, Brittany Schock, for joining me in the chat and acting as our producer. And thank you to all of you. And we will see you tomorrow on Coronavirus Conversations. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks.
See you soon. Bye-bye.
Appreciate it.